All right. So anyway, what happened was we had a unanimous vote. We did not have one dissenting vote for him. That's how well liked he was. He really buffaloed the people. But whatever. Um, I went upstairs and I said to him and the kids, I said, well, as you know, we had a vote downstairs for Pastor Mike. And for him to be able to become our youth pastor, we needed a 90% approval rating. And I'm sorry, but we didn't have 90% today. I would pay $100 for a picture of his face right now. What he looked like, it looked like he got kicked in the stomach. He looked sick. I said, we got 100%. And he goes, oh, paybacks. And then the next Sunday morning, 5 in the morning is when I would roll in my office on Sundays. And I turn on that. Well, I came in the outer office, and the place smelled strange. It was like a garden, And I turned that light on. I thought, no, this can't be real. Anyway, that's the story. I'm sticking with it. I want to start this morning by asking you the question, what is culture? If you had to define that word, what is culture? It's kind of one of those awkward words, isn't it? But you know what culture is, don't you, kind of? Basically, to give you a rough definition of culture is basically the way a group of people does stuff. Okay? You're a culture here in Molina, Colorado. You do stuff a certain way. I live in Michigan, and I live in a place that's notoriously called West Michigan. We are all along the lakeshore, along the lakes and on the lakes. And so anyway, that's kind of a subculture unto itself. And everywhere you go, you deal with cultural differences, and we deal with cultural differences all the time with the Spanish American Mission. And let me just illustrate how that works. And one of the goals is that we want to understand their culture while at the same time not misrepresenting our culture as Americans. So every year, I'm in and out of Mexico several times a year, but each time I fly in, I'm given a driver and a vehicle, and that driver will take me around to the various places I need to go. And one year, I'll never forget it, it's about 3 years ago, 2 years ago, something like that. I had a guy by the name of Ben Hameen, and I'll never forget Ben because of the fact that he went so inordinately slow. I thought I would die. We're in a city of 2.5 million people, lots of traffic, and it just was terribly slow moving. And I just thought, I don't know what I'm going to do. That was day one. Day two, I met him in the lobby of the hotel as he came to pick me up. And I said, okay, Ben, listen to me real close. I need to see 9 pastors today. I got 9 different pastors I contact. Most of them, 5 of them, are here in this metropolitan area called Torreon, Coahuila. That's right in the center of the country. That's where our staging area is for all our churches, of which we have 29 of them down there. I said, but I need to see 5 pastors in this town and 4 in the outlying villages. So we're going to have to go rapido, man, really fast. Rapido, you get it? I said, to put it in the words of my southern brother-in-law from Louisiana, we got to go like 2 scalded dogs. He gave me this very quizzical look. He said, well what do you mean by scalded? What's scalded? I said, like when you pour boiling water on a dog. You Americanos pour boiling water on poor dogs? I said, no, we don't do that. Our culture loves dogs. We really, he said, well, somebody up there must pour boiling water on dogs for you to have a saying. I said, Ben, it's just a saying. Please, let's just go fast, okay? And he's okay. And that day, he drove like a maniac. I thought I was going to die. He was not really equipped to drive the speed that he was driving. And I thought, I got to change this or I will die and never see my grandchildren again. So anyway, I said to him the next morning, I said, okay, Ben, much more laid back day. I don't have to see many pastors today. I said, we might even stop at Oxo and have a cup of coffee. I was just trying to calm it all down. I said, so just keep that in mind, okay? So we just go slower today. He said, so maybe we just burn 1 dog today? And I said, fine, we burn 1 dog today, whatever, Ben. I was desperate for Ben not to misunderstand the American culture as being abusive to animals. But he was getting that drift, And so I was very careful to try to explain myself. We deal with this all the time, the Spanish American Mission. There are things we look at and we say, okay, is this American culture that we're imposing on Mexican culture? And then every now and then we have to say, okay, this is neither American or Mexican culture. We need to be thinking about Christ culture. And so sometimes we have to supersede it with that. But whatever, we deal with that a great deal. What I want to do this morning is just give you a little bit of and I'm going to be done by 5 minutes to 10, correct? Give or take 20 minutes. Okay, perfect. Yeah, we'll go long and hard here. Anyway, the Spanish American Mission, our purpose is to come alongside the churches of Mexico to assist them in fulfilling the Great Commission. So before I go into that, let me tell you how it began. In 1949, there was a couple of businessmen in the Lansing area, that's the capital of Michigan, that were concerned about all the Mexican migrants that were there, and nobody was ministering the gospel to them. Both these guys were fluent in Spanish, and so what they did is they went out to the migrant camps on Sundays. In those days, they used to shut the camps down, and nobody would work on Sundays. That's not true now, but whatever. Those guys went, and they would share the gospel, and they started putting on services in these various migrant camps Sunday afternoons. And on one particular Sunday, there was a guy who they said, you know, we'd like to have you talk to this guy. He's got the flu or something. He's sick in one of the barracks over here. Turned out he was sleeping off a drunk from the night before. His name was Tony Gomez. They shared the gospel with Tony Gomez, and Tony got saved. You know how people get saved, and then there's people that get saved, you know what I mean? And they just go like that spiritually. That's what happened to Tony Gomez. And a church by the name of Williamston Baptist, just outside of Lansing, discipled him. And when they finished, I shouldn't say finished, but when they had him pretty well discipled, they sent him back to Mexico. And he planted, in the next 20 years, 7 churches, some of them in bars that he used to get drunk in, La Cantinas, they call them. And so he would turn those into church buildings. And so 7 churches were going on. Meanwhile, my father, who was a stockbroker, I'm the only one in my family that's gone into the ministry, but all my family is into business, including my father, who was a stockbroker. He and another businessman decided, well, we need to incorporate this thing and make it a 501c3 so people can give money that we can funnel down to Mexico to support the ministry of Spanish American Mission, or Tony Gomez. So that is the beginning of it in 1961. Since then, we have grown to the point we have 29 churches throughout the center of Mexico, including one up in Michigan, in Grant, Michigan. I'll come back to that later. And actually, we have about 42 churches that really could speak to the point of they have their beginnings with the Spanish American Mission. But 29 of them that are actively involved with us, and we continue to support them and do ministry with them. And so that's really the beginning of this thing. So we as a mission, we have no paid staff. I have a small stipend. I have some supporters that give me for when I'm traveling like this and whatever. I'm retired from being a pastor for 41 years, and so I do 2 things. I'm with the Spanish American Mission doing this, and then I'm with a thing called Barnabas Ministry that puts pastors in pastoral support groups, and I'll come back to that in a moment. But anyway, we don't have any staff members. The only staff member that is a paid one is our bookkeeper, and that's just a minor stipend that he gets. We own no buildings, and frankly, we have no money. And that's what's kind of interesting. It's really kind of an interesting world. Coming from a family of businessmen, it's really interesting to work in a mission that has money coming in, that we support these pastors and we do all these various things. But when we build buildings for pastors, when we commence to build that building, or when we first put together a project, we literally will have virtually no money in our bank account to be able to accommodate that. And what is amazing is every year for the last 32 years now, it's 32 years of our buildings down there, God always supplies the need. We had a building that we needed to build. It was $52,000 that we needed to put that building up. We got $54,000. The next year, we needed $8,000 to build a small chapel way up in the mountains. We got $8,000. And that's the way it's worked all the time. You know, so my board will say to me, so Doug, we're going to build this project, and I think like next month I'll be down in Mexico doing some reconnaissance work down there, and we'll figure out which is the church that we ought to build a building for. And when I do that, we'll at the end of that time, I'll go to my board and I'll say, okay, here's the project, and they'll say, well, how much money do we have in the bank account? By the way, I think we have in our building fund right now $1,200. Wow, coin a clink, ladies and gentlemen. Wow. But we'll probably need like $10,000 or something like that, because that's kind of the average of what a building costs when we whack up just a basic shell of a building. That means we'll put up a building the size of this one right here. Just cement walls, steel roof, and no floors. It'll be dirt floors. And we leave it to them to finish that, okay? But we get the critical mass of it done, and they're literally sitting on cement blocks that are turned up on end with planks across it, and those are their pews when they first set it up. And by the time I get back there a few years later to that particular village, they'll have the cement poured, the windows all in with bars and everything, because they have to bar everything. It's funny how benches and chairs and everything just walk in Mexico, but anyway, they have to do that. And so that's what we do. We just come alongside the churches to do this, all these various things they need. And I'll just categorize it in 4 different things that basically we do for the people of Mexico. We finance the pastors, and right now we're supporting 22 pastors down there. We build buildings as needed. If a church has a critical mass of people and they own a piece of land, and we look at that and we think they have a sizable enough group to warrant this, I'll bring a crew down there in January, because that's the other thing I do is I pull together all these steel workers, block layers, and carpenters in the off season to fly to Mexico and build these buildings. And so we'll build a building as they had the land and they've got the mass of people. The third thing we do is we do medical relief. By that I mean they have socialized medicine down there, and let me tell you, it is really, really poor medicine. It's very scary. In fact, I said to my wife one day, with all the drug cartels and stuff and all the murders and stuff, you know, in one city I was in, we had 54 people shot, killed, or hung that week while I was there. I know that because it's in the paper and they show you the pictures. It's just really graphic journalism down there. I never heard a shot and I never saw a dead body. God just takes care of us, and it's been like that for all these years that I've traveled down there. But I came home one year, and I said to my wife, of all the dangerous places I've been, I said, I just came from the single most dangerous place in all of Mexico. And she said, where? I said, it was in the ER ward of the local public hospital. The guy that I called on there, he was a key worker for us, architect. He was hooked up to this machine and had blood all over it. It wasn't his blood. It was blood from the patient the night before. Yeah, the halls are lined with people on dirty little blankets and coughing and hacking. Said to the guy with me, I just want to take a bath in Purell after I leave a place like that. It's just rife with sickness. So what we do is we ask our pastors and their families to go to the private hospitals, and we fund that. So we have a medical relief fund to do that, so they don't have to go to the I used to say the local veterinary clinic, but then a guy in our church was a veterinarian. I thought that analogy doesn't work anymore, so I stopped that. But anyway, that was offensive. And then the last thing we do is what we call medical educational advancement. And by that, what I mean is that we bring professors and adjuncts down there from Peru and from the United States to put on classes twice a year, because all the pastors that we have come through the ranks. We never bring any American down there to be a pastor. We just don't do that. Culturally, there's all kinds of issues you have to work through, not to mention language school and all the inherent expenses in that. So we have guys coming up through the ranks that are being developed, and they will become our pastors. But then it's incumbent upon us as a mission to continue to further education. So we'll bring in, like in April, we just had a couple of professors down there that for a week, 5 hours a day for 5 days, they taught a class on New Testament survey. We have another one scheduled for November. And that's usually the schedule, April and November. So, yeah, let me go to the slides I have here, and I'll just kind of talk through these things here. And so the first slide is not coming to us because I'm not pushing the button. There it is. This is a very typical village that we work in. We have a lot of mountain villages like that. This one is a place called El Retiro. There's a guy by the name of Emmanuel Oliveira. Young guy, I'll show you a picture of him in a moment, but he works in a little dusty village like that. El Retiro means the retirement. I don't know why they call it that, because there's just a lot of little kids there, but that's very typical of the kind of village that we will work in. And then, of course, we have the churches in the city that we work with that are much more cosmopolitan. That's Emmanuel right there with his little girl, darling little girl. And that's a guy that I just got to tell you, these are some of the heroes in my life. This guy planted this church as a young guy in his early 20s, if you can fathom that. And then as he got a critical mass of people together, they would raise money to buy blocks. They go buy 150 blocks, and they go lay those blocks. And then they would get more money, and they lay another 200 blocks. By the time we got to them, they had put up the walls, and they were wanting to build, they wanted to finish the building. This is the picture of the outside of that building, and my men that I brought in, and by the time we got there, they had the walls plastered like that, but they did not have the inside done. And so he had kind of a stair-step type thing. He had a dream of having kind of an amphitheater thing. I thought, oh, my word, you know, we don't do this. We just lay flat cement. And a couple of my flat workers said, cool, man. This is kind of fun, you know. We can kind of be a little artistic. You want a little arc to that, Emmanuel? Oh, yeah. Can you do an arc? I said, well, yeah. And so they did this arc thing, and it turned out just beautiful. And he has filled that church. It's almost 200 people now, and it's just a delight. The roof on that thing is a $10,000 steel system that I thought, where in the world did he get the money to do that? What he would do to raise money to buy the blocks and all this stuff is he and his wife, on the weekend, they would make, like Friday and Saturday, they would make all these pastries and candies, and then they send the people of the congregation out to sell it in the outlying villages. And then they bring the money back, and they would use that to buy materials. But $10,000, what about that for a steel strand roof? And so there's a guy, I can't think of his name right now, it escapes me, but whatever. He's a guy who does a lot of work for us. He has a steel fabrication firm there. He said, I'll build that roof. It'll cost $10,000, and you pay me as you get the money. I thought, you have got to be kidding me. The last time I was down there, they had paid off $8,000 of that. And two of my guys that were on the trip said, we'll clean up the other $2,000. So it's paid off. What a wonderful thing. I love guys on trips like that. And I said, keep it coming, guys. Anyway, there's a picture of Emmanuel. I don't even know that he shaves. He is so young. It's just amazing. This is a picture of one of our churches. That's very typical what they look like right there when they're finished, after they get the lights in and the floors. And they put in beautiful tile floors. They put in marble floors. I mean, the money it would cost. Well, you know, when you're at the place where they mine marble, it's pretty cheap. It's kind of like the streets of gold in heaven, you know. They have the streets of marble there in Mexico because they get it from the Marble Mountain there. There's a picture of one of our more recent crews that went down, and then a couple of the Mexicans with us that assisted in the project. And if you ever are interested in going, any of you guys, we have a trip coming up January the 11th through the 18th. We're doing a trip down there, and the only cost you have is the price of your airfare and the price of your hotel, which is about $70 a night. And if you don't mind sharing a room with another guy, you can knock that down to $35 a night. And if you buy the tickets early enough, they're about $600-700. I think I just bought a ticket for $580, but that's because I'm going in July. Nobody wants to go to Mexico in July, 110-degree heat. Anyway, this is a picture of another one of our churches. I show you this picture because this guy, he had one desire. That car there, I have a son that's a police officer. He would say a car like that ought to be written a ticket for impersonating an automobile. I mean, it was such a piece of junk. You sit on wire in there, and you have to climb in from the right side and over the hump and everything because the left door doesn't work. And it's just a wreck. And he said, you know, I want to ask something of you, Douglas, and he's doing this through a translator. And I thought, okay, he's going to hit me up for a car. Because I'm the guy that they look to, because I'm the exec of the mission. They'll just say, okay, he'll put out the need to people. I thought he's going to ask for a car. You know what he asked for? He said, we need more classrooms out back. Let me tell you, guys like that are heroes to me. Couldn't believe it. I thought, are you kidding me? His name is Moises. I said, Moises, you got a critical mass of people here that are meeting in the building we built. I said, let's take a look at the project that you want to do. And he said, well, you know, we have, first of all, we have one classroom up, and it's that thatched-looking thing that you see right beyond his car that is covered with milk cartons, okay? They have a Lala factory there that bottles milk in cardboard cartons, you know. but sometimes they get a lot of scrap thrown out back. They gather that and they put up skids, and they put that all over the skids. And he said, we have a family in our church. They had no place to go, so they live in that thing all week long. And then Sunday morning, we ask them to pull all their stuff out and just put it out back. And then we have Sunday school in there for our kids. He said, and then Sunday night, then they move back in. They live there. I just thought, this is an unbelievable world. I come from such wealth, don't you? The poorest among us are just loaded compared to the people down in Mexico. Anyway, this is our crew building the buildings that they wanted out back in that church, and our guys did a magnificent job throwing up, I think, 3 classrooms. This is the finished product right here. After we left, they put up those doors and the windows, and then they painted them that garish color. I go, oh, my word. Oh, are you serious? Oh, yeah, it's brighter here. Yeah, they're that fluorescent. I'm telling you, you need sunglasses to look at those doors. I thought, well, this is not West Michigan. This is Mexico, Welcome to Mexico. There it is. Chartreuse is the color. And they fill those classrooms with kids and adults on Sundays. This right here is the largest building we've built. This is our staging area. It's in Gomez Palacio. And it is kind of the mothership church. And it's a church about 400 people, something like that, give or take. And so they meet there, but also, I say it's our staging area. We bring in our crews there. They eat their meals there. And so they eat meals in the back part of that thing. I'll go back here. So you're looking at the back of the place where the people meet. If you turned around 180 degrees, you'd be looking at this. And that's the other half of the building. So a very large building we built. And it was probably a $500,000 project over a period of years. And God just supplied the money. The money just came here and there. And we did it in bits and pieces. I mean, we had footings in one year. Another year, we ended up putting up the steel uprights. And then another year, we could afford the roof system. And on it went. But now that is the finished product. And that's been finished for 10 years now. That's kind of old news. But anyway, this is a picture of what's happening now. They're dropping the ceiling in there. Let me back up and just say this. One of the things that the mission is wanting to do more and more is we're wanting the Mexican people to have skin in the game. That's not to speak derogatorily about them, but I used to think about my kids. They'll take as much as I give them, If I give them an allowance, if I wanted to give them $100 a week, which I didn't, for an allowance, they'd take it, right? And the Mexican people are just the same way. If we as a mission just want to keep giving and giving and giving, they're never going to pick up the responsibility for this. So what we have done is we have been very careful to let them do all that interior work. And they had a man in the congregation that donated the money, about $7,000 US, to drop that ceiling and put in that light system that they've got. It looks beautiful. That's half done. It'll continue on. In fact, I think it's all the way to the front now. But Spanish American Mission had nothing to do with that. The other thing that we do, and this is there at the church in Gomez Palacio, we do Vacation Bible School, and that's just a picture of the kids at the end of the week of Vacation Bible School. We have some village churches. One of our churches, it's Universidad, can't think of the rest of the name, but anyway, Villa Universidad, that's it, Village of University, because it's very much a college area on the edge of Torreon. They have a church of about 180 people, something like that. We build a building for them. And they will have 350 kids come to Vacation Bible School. They said we'd have 1,000 kids if we'd let it. We literally stop. We just say, okay, this is all we can take is 350 kids. Because there's just that many kids that want to come to Vacation Bible School. And so we've had that same kind of flocking here, and it's been fun to watch. And we have a lot of kids come to Christ as a result of it. This is a picture here of, I mentioned the Pastor Enrichment Program where we bring in these adjunct professors from, turns out Peru is one of our primary spots. It was a seminary there. And then also the United States. And this is a picture of the most recent class that we had in April. And so it's pastors, and that's the guys standing there, and ministry leaders. So that'd be like Sunday school teachers and whatever. So you see those ladies seated there in the foreground. And that was the class that we had for a week. And it worked out very well. That has been one of the best plans we've had for furthering education. I was talking to Dave, is that the guy whose house I'm staying? Yeah, Dave and I were talking, and he was talking about why we do this. What are we trying to do? I said, well, our people are, undereducated, and so we're trying to educate them more. And he said, sometimes that lack of education is probably to your advantage. I said, well, it really is, because they stick closer to the gospel. We don't get hooked up in a lot of, surrounding theological issues. I said, but here's the thing that I'm really concerned about as the director of the mission. And I said, I want us to ground these leaders that we have in such a way theologically that we don't hear that one of our churches that teaching that Jesus is a Hindu goddess, or like I heard of one guy who was talking about the 9 persons of the Trinity, 3 in 1 in the Spirit, 3 in 1 in the Father, 3 in person and 1 in the Son. What a messed up thing that is, Where did that come from? That's not one of our churches, and that's what I'm trying to protect us from. I don't want us to go down that road. I want us to be at least theologically grounded and then stick to the gospel. And we're dealing mostly, in the city, we're dealing with much more cosmopolitan people. But out in the villages where a lot of these pastors are, we got people that can't even read. We got people that live 20 miles outside of Torreon and never been there because they don't have the money to get there. You talk about a cloistered life or a separate or just a, what do you want to call it, a protected type of life. That's what those village people have. So when you come in and preach the gospel, don't mess them up with a whole lot of other controversies that are going on. Anyway, this is one of the things our churches do in the city. We do street ministry, and they'll hand out free clothes. They'll feed people. And we had a couple guys that are barbers, and they said, hey, why don't we just be barbers for a Friday night? So Friday afternoon, Friday night, they hit the streets and they give kids haircuts. It's a way of ministering to the people and loving them. It doesn't cost anything, This right here, I mentioned there's 2 worlds that I'm involved in. I'm involved with Spanish American Mission, but then I'm also involved with Barnabas Ministry that sets up John 17:23 groups. Those are groups of 4 to 5 pastors each that will meet every other week to pray with each other and to support each other. When Mike was in Michigan, he was part of a John 17 group. Actually, I think you led one of our groups. Yeah. And so we're doing that in Mexico. That's one of our John 17 groups. I was in South Africa in, what is the town? Johannesburg, yeah, of course. And we had pastors come down from Malawi and from Tanzania and Kenya. And we ended up establishing 23 John 17 groups. Isn't that just great? And the name of those groups, John 17:23, taken from that verse where Jesus said, we pray that they are one as we are one, so that the world will know that you sent me. Our marching orders to be unified as fellow believers. And pastors need to lead the way on that. So we have in the Michigan in the Michigan area alone, in West Michigan, we have 88 of those pastors that are in John 17 groups now. We just had a breakfast, and 60 of them were invited or RSVP'd. 58 out of 60 showed up. I was thrilled because pastors are horrible at keeping commitments. Take that to heart, Pastor. Oh, Doug, I meant to be there, but we had to stay home and wash the cat that day. I said, gee, okay. Anyway, this is one of our John 17 groups. This is not our ideal because let me turn around and look at these guys. It's a little larger than what we'd like, but it's such a wide variety of people. There's somebody here, the youth pastor, his wife, what do you call him, the intern? Yeah, his fiance was raised Christian Reformed. This guy's Christian Reformed. Did you know the Christian Reformed are down there? I was raised Christian Reformed, so I have a great heart for that. This guy's a psychologist. This guy here is a school administrator. This guy here is a builder. He's a builder. And this guy here, I can't remember what he does. And I'm telling you that because all these guys are bivocational. Hardly anybody is a full-time pastor. And so these guys have all these various occupations, and we bring them together. And this is in a Denny's retro restaurant there. Everything's in English. It's kind of fun, as well as Spanish for those guys. But anyway, we met together, and when I fly in, I'll meet with those guys. This guy here, his name is Ramon Sosa. Maybe someday I'll bring him out here. Ramon is kind of our coordinator of what goes on in Mexico. But we had 4 John 17 groups. We have 3. It's hard keeping them going down there in Mexico, but that's the other thing that we do down there for these pastors to encourage each other. And they're multi-denominational, okay? It's quite a wide variety of people. And this guy here, his support, his sole support comes from one guy in Michigan. And I said to him one day, I said, hey, man, I just got to confess something to you, where your support comes from. He said, okay, where's my support come from? I said, well, it's one guy in Michigan, and he has a brewery. That's what he does for a living. He makes beer. Well, that's okay. I'll take his money, you know. But, he's a guy that I happen to know well, and he's a believer, and he's got this brewery, and he said, Doug, I want to support the mission. I said, fine. I'll take the brewery money, and good godly guy. And this guy here is just a great pastor. I think he's the guy that we'll probably end up building a building for, because he's renting right now. So I digress. My wife just passed away 4 months ago. Mike probably told you that. That's her in the middle there. Ugh, that's hard to look at. Yeah. She died of ALS. But we're there as a group of builders, and she's standing there in the middle because the week that we were there, she came down and led a prayer seminar, and that was great. Gosh, I didn't want to do this morning. Hang in there, guys. I'll get it together here. Okay, I'm together. Good. Here we go. This right here is a church in Santa Lucia. This last January, we sent a crew down there, and those guys did repair work on that building that was, dilapidated, because we built that 30 years ago, and they had a number of problems. And so that's our crew that went down and had a great time. This is the pastor of it. His name is Miguel Martinez, and that's his wife. His wife looks like she's 12 years old, just a beautiful girl. And there are 3 children, and they pastor that church. And his father was the one that founded the church. The father is this guy right here. And this presents a problem for us that we need to somehow solve. You see his one eye is closed. His name is Miguel Martinez. He is Miguel Martinez Sr., and he had a stroke. And stroke is a very common thing in Mexico. And so his whole right side is unusable. And that's the chairman of our board, Victor Hansen. And he is paralyzed on that one side, and we continue to support him. Here's where that's a bit of a problem, is meeting the needs of pastors like that who are encumbered. And we now have 2 pastors that have had strokes like that just can hardly function, and yet, they need support. So we continue to support them. But it did prompt an idea that we have now augmented. We no longer take pastors on to support them on a monthly basis. We have 22 pastors we're supporting now monthly. But from now on, when a pastor gets a group of people together, I take it back, when a guy sees a village where he thinks he could pull together a group of people, he thinks the place is ripe for evangelism, he'll go in and plant a church. If he gets a critical mass of people together and they're meeting in a building and he needs financial support from the Spanish American Mission, what we will do, rather than agree to pay him on a monthly basis for the rest of his ministry life, we do what we call the third program. And that's where we will support him 100% for the first year, and after that first year, he will lose 1/3 of his support. And the next year, he'll lose another third, and after 3 years, he is without support from the mission. And that frees us up to continue to minister, or to open the doors up to minister to other pastors in this way. And so we are moving in that direction. That does a couple things. One, it doesn't paint us into a corner that we can't sustain financially, especially as they get up into upper years. And the other thing, and this is the thing that really, biblically speaking, needs to happen, and that's that the people down there need to take responsibility for their pastor. They need to have skin in the game. So going in right from the outset, they know that they are going to have to support this guy. And so we tell them, third. As the director of the mission, I'm always glad for the money that comes in here and there. I love churches like yours that say, we want to put you on our budget. We want to continue to support you as you go along as a mission. love that because I can bank on that. I can build a budget around that. But every now and then I have a church that comes to me and they'll say, we're going to give you a $5,000 grant for these 2 pastors or these 3 pastors over a period of years. Well, I'll take the money. We need it. But I have to let that guy know this money's going to come to an end, and that's kind of hard. He didn't know that right away coming into that, but he does now, And so we are just so appreciative of churches that support us on a regular monthly basis that just continue to meet the needs of the mission. And the needs are always growing. I get a little frustrated every now and then as the director. I get these letters from churches that said, please fill out the report, a ministry report. How many souls saved this year? I thought, I don't know. 29 churches scattered all over the place. I don't know how many people got saved. We don't keep close stats like that. And then they'll say, what are your support needs? $3 million, $4 million, whatever you give me, I'll spend it. I need it. I'll use it as God puts the needs before us. And so that's always a frustrating question for me. And I know those are really aimed at a particular pastor. He's a guy with his wife and kids in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and they need so much a month. I get it. I just have to call those churches and say, look, you're talking to a guy that is working with all these different pastors. I don't know what we need for each one. I do know this. Every one of them is underpaid, and I need more money than what we're getting. And as much money as I get, we as a board will just keep raising the support of those pastors, and we'll be enabled to take on more pastors and to build buildings. One of the things we do is all the money that comes in that's undesignated, that's just general giving, we call it. We pull 5% of that out and put it in the medical relief fund. So that thing builds up all the time. So sometimes that gets to be $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $7,000, $8,000, and then all of a sudden, our bookkeeper let me know we're down to our last $1,000 in medical relief because of X number of cases that have come along, and that's all well and good. And that does bring up another subject. We as a mission, unlike a lot of missions, we don't draw any money off in terms of administrative fees. We have no administrative fees. Basically, I don't even know what the percentage would be, like 1 or 2% or something. A lot of missions, what they will charge is you give to that mission, 10 to 15% will be taken out for administrative fees. Spanish American Mission guarantees you that every dollar that you give, 100 cents on the dollar, goes to the work of the ministry in Mexico. I think that Gideon's does that. Anybody here a Gideon? No Gideons. Oh, my. Better get some Gideons in here, buddy. So those Gideons, the Gideon ministry is completely funded by gifts from people, and they take no administrative fees because you have all these people that are just working for free for the Gideons. We do that at the Spanish American Mission. We don't own a building, don't have any money. We trust God for the money, and it's been wonderful. I just got to tell you, it has been a faith journey, and I just, every now and then I get a call. Some guy will say, in fact, I hunt deer in Missouri, and a 3,000-acre farm, and he only allows 5 people on it. And that's me and my brother-in-laws. And I found this out because this guy's a supporter of the mission. And I said to him one day, this is kind of self-seeking because I'm a deer hunter. I said, so, Dean, you have any deer on your property? Oh, I got scads of them. I said, you ever let anybody hunt? He said, nope. Would you, if you want to hunt? I said, sure. So anyway, and I said, well, I come with my brother and my brother-in-laws, and he said, oh, that's fine. I'll take you. What is it, 5 years? Yeah, fine. So we've been doing that for 18 years. The first year we walked in there, we hunted, we shot a bunch of deer, and then he took us out to dinner at the end of the week, and then he gave me a check for $25,000 at the end of the week. Turned to my brother-in-law, I said, I could really write off my license and everything as off my taxes because this is really a fundraising trip that I'm on. And he's given several gifts since then. I had no idea that we needed that much money. But we had a project that came up that demanded $100,000. We need to buy the land. And we don't usually like to buy the land, but it was for that ministry center. That's our staging area. That was $126,000, but by the time we had the conversion rate and then things changed in our favor, we ended up paying $100,000 for that thing. I didn't know that we needed all that money, but God knew. Isn't that fantastic? It's just exciting. So it's one of the more exciting things that I do is working with the Spanish American Mission. Of course, working with guys like Mike and Barnabas Ministry, that's been pretty exciting too. And I thank God for that. Does anybody have a question? Perfect. Okay, good. I'm done. Now, does anybody seriously have a question for me? We have just a minute maybe. Well, either you don't care or I fully explained myself, so there's no need. Lady in the back, I see that hand. Yeah, let me tell you about Urquizo, a village, and a guy by the name of Pascual. Pascual, he is my hero. This guy, we built a building for him in San Pablo, which is a new church plant for him because he started a church in Urquizo, but here he is in San Pablo. And he sold his house in another village, took all the money, and bought land for the church. And now he rents a house there. He has no house. He has no car. And I said, so he just gave that to the church so they could build? And he said, yeah. They said, yeah, that's what he did, with no expectation that it's ever going to come back to him. Would you be willing to sell your house and give all the equity for your church to build a new building? He doesn't have a car, so I'm trying to raise money for him. I'm trying to raise $4,000 or $5,000 to buy a used vehicle down there for him. We used to try to get vehicles across. That was a circus. Oh, my word. The hours I've spent at the border. I tell you, we don't do that anymore. We buy cars in the interior now because it's just too complicated. Anyway, that's an immediate need right there. $4,000 to $5,000. I think we have 1,400 or something that's come in over the last few months toward that. I would like, when I go down there, I'll be down there next month, but I would like, when I go down in January, I'd like to be able to leave the job site once we get the guys up and running and go shop cars for Pascual. There's a quick knee-jerk answer to you. You caught me cold there, lady, and wow, God just brought that to mind. I think God wants that to happen. Anybody else? Okay, Dr. Wetzig, thank you for the time, and thank you for your support.